Good evening. My name is Michael Mayall, and I am the superintendent of the Brunswick City Schools. I would like to welcome you to our town hall where we will discuss learning options for the second semester. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to share a few important reminders. First, the Brunswick City Schools will return face-to-face learning on Monday, January 11th. Our elementary students will attend school every day. Our middle school and high school students will return to the hybrid model. If you committed to remote learning, you will remain in remote learning until January 28th, which is the end of our first semester. As we prepare for the return of students, please know that we will continue to be committed to providing a safe environment for our students and staff. The mitigation strategies that we have employed continue to be in effect. I would also like to thank our students, our parents, and our staff for your patience. Because of the COVID pandemic, this has been a year of constant change. I am looking forward to putting things in place so that we can begin to return to normal. Additionally, I would like to thank you for all of the tremendous amount of feedback you have provided us about remote learning. We had over 3,000 responses from parents on our latest feedback survey. Your feedback has had a direct impact on what our second semester should look like. Tonight, we will be talking about the learning environment options for second semester, which begins February 1st. I want to be very sure everybody understands that the options that we discuss tonight will not go into effect until February 1st. On Monday, I sent an email to all of our families that outlined the options for second semester. Tonight, we want to provide specific details about your options as well as answers to any questions you might have. Below, you will see a link to a form for you to submit any questions that you might have. We will do our very best to answer your questions at the end of tonight's town hall. We will put out an FAQ to address any additional questions we are unable to answer tonight. I would now like to turn the presentation over to Pat Geschke, our Director of Instruction and Innovation. Pat will walk us through the second semester options and schedule.
Good evening. As Mr. Mayall said, my name is Pat Geschke, and I am the Director of Instruction and Innovation for the district. Tonight, I'll be walking us through the options and schedules for the second semester, which begins February 1st. Before I begin, I would like to clarify a few things to hopefully avoid any confusion. Similar to the first semester, we will be offering, depending on grade level, a variety of options for our families, including multiple remote or online options. To help avoid confusion, we are giving specific titles to the online options so you know exactly what we're referring to. The first option is the Brunswick Virtual Academy, or BVA. The BVA is the same thing as the remote option, where we have Brunswick teachers teaching the Brunswick curriculum. The name is new, but the format is what we did during the first semester, As you know, the BVA looks different at different grade levels, and we will review those differences tonight. The other option is Lincoln Learning. Lincoln Learning, which is only available for our kindergarten through 8th grade students, is the third-party curriculum that is completely self-paced. It does not have any live instruction, and there is no teacher teaching the class. I would like to echo Mr. Mayall's comments about the amount of feedback we have received. Your voices were instrumental in designing options that would best meet the needs of our students and families. 3,000 responses is amazing. I also want to thank all of our remote learning parents who met with me via Google Meets to discuss remote learning options. I appreciate your time and your input. As a result of the feedback we received, you will see that some options remain the same and some have changed. So let's take a closer look at the options available to you for the second semester. As you can see, we wanted to organize your options by grade band so that you knew exactly what is available to you. Our preschool program will offer face-to-face and the Brunswick Virtual Academy. Our kindergarten through 5th grade program, elementary program, will offer face-to-face, the Brunswick Virtual Academy, and Lincoln Learning. Our 6th through 8th grade middle school program will offer face-to-face, the Brunswick Virtual Academy, and Lincoln Learning. And our 9th through 12th grade high school program will offer face-to-face and the Brunswick Virtual Academy. As he said earlier, Mr. Mayel sent an email to all of our families about the second semester options this past Monday. In the email was a link to the BCSD second semester remote commitment form. It is important to know that if you want your child to participate in remote learning, whether that is the BVA or Lincoln Learning, the form must be completed by this Sunday, January 10th. If it is not completed, your child will be placed in the face-to-face environment. If you wish for your child to return to face-to-face learning, you do not need to fill out the form. A link to this form can also be found on the BCSD website under District News. Just like in the first semester, the commitment to either the BVA or Lincoln Learning must be a commitment for the entire second semester, meaning your child will remain in the chosen environment until the end of the school year. We need to do this because of the dramatic impact these changes have on staffing and class rosters, which we'll discuss more in a few minutes. We felt it was very important to go through these options at a granular level so that you know exactly what is available to your child and exactly what their schedule will look like based on the option chosen. So let's start with our preschool options. Preschool has two options for the second semester: face-to-face learning or the Brunswick Virtual Academy. If you select face-to-face learning, your student will attend either their AM or PM session every day. Our preschool version of the Brunswick Virtual Academy will have students attend online classes during the PM every day. Again, this online class will be taught by a Brunswick teacher using the Brunswick preschool curriculum. Here are the schedules for the two preschool options. If you are in the face-to-face AM session, you will attend from 9 to 11:15. The PM session runs from 12:30 to 2:45. If you are in the preschool Brunswick Virtual Academy, you will be joining online from 12:30 to 1 o'clock. Additionally, students will have individual service times. Kindergarten, first grade, and second grade will have three options: face-to-face learning, the Brunswick Virtual Academy, and Lincoln Learning. These options are very similar to what was offered in the first semester. If you select face-to-face learning, your students will attend face-to-face instruction every day. If you select the Brunswick Virtual Academy, your child will be placed in either an AM or PM group and attend online class through Google Meets on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. These classes will be taught by Brunswick teachers, and they will use the Brunswick curriculum. The classes offered will be ELA and math, with science, social studies, and social emotional learning embedded in the ELA block. Also, there will be an option to participate in our specials: music, art, and physical education. I will provide more information about that in just a second. Wednesdays will be reserved for targeted interventions. If you select Lincoln Learning, you will be placed in the asynchronous third-party curriculum. As a reminder, Lincoln Learning is completely self-paced and there is no live instruction. The number of classes a student can take in Lincoln Learning is limited. If you select face-to-face learning, your child will follow the regular elementary schedule, which runs from 8:55 to 3:25. If you select the K2 Brunswick Virtual Academy, the schedule will be the same as it was during the first semester. The AM group will meet from 9 to 11:30 on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. The PM group will meet from 12 to 2:30 on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Wednesdays will once again be reserved for targeted interventions. The Lincoln Learning schedule is self-paced, but there will be a specific expectation of progress for attendance purposes. The biggest change in our options when compared to the first semester occurs in the third grade. Based on the feedback we received from parents, they felt the need for more instructional minutes at the third grade level. So with that in mind, there are three options for our third grade students: face-to-face learning, the third grade Brunswick Virtual Academy, and Lincoln Learning. If you select face-to-face learning, your student will attend face-to-face instruction every day. If you select the third grade Brunswick Virtual Academy, your child will attend full-day online classes on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. There will be a dedicated ELA block and a dedicated math block. Science, social studies, and social emotional learning will be embedded in those blocks. Again, these classes will be taught by Brunswick teachers who will be using the Brunswick curriculum. Wednesdays will also be reserved for targeted interventions, and there will be an option to participate in specials. If you select Lincoln Learning, you will be placed in the asynchronous third-party curriculum. Just to be clear, Lincoln Learning is completely self-paced, and there is no live instruction. The number of classes a student can take in Lincoln Learning is limited. If you select face-to-face learning, your child will follow the regular elementary schedule, which runs from 8:55 to 3:25. If you select the grade 3 Brunswick Virtual Academy, the schedule will look very different than the way it looked in the first semester. Students will receive instruction on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. The ELA block will run from 9 to 11:30. Students will have lunch from 11:30 to 12:30. And then the math block will run from 12:30 to 2 o'clock. Wednesdays will be reserved for targeted interventions. As with K2, the Lincoln Learning schedule is self-paced, but there will be a specific expectation of progress for attendance purposes. 4th and 5th grades will have 3 options: face-to-face learning, the Brunswick Virtual Academy, and Lincoln Learning. These options are the same as what was offered in the first semester. If you select face-to-face learning, your student will attend face-to-face instruction every day. If you select the 4th or 5th grade Brunswick Virtual Academy, your child will attend full-day online classes every day, Monday through Friday. There will be 3 blocks: an ELA block, a math block, and a science social studies block. Social emotional learning will be embedded in these blocks, and these classes will be taught by Brunswick teachers using the Brunswick curriculum. If you select Lincoln Learning, you will be placed in the asynchronous third-party curriculum. As previously stated, Lincoln Learning is completely self-paced, and there is no live instruction, and the number of classes a student can take in Lincoln Learning is limited. If you do select face-to-face learning, your child will follow the regular elementary schedule, which goes from 8:55 to 3:25. If you select the 4th or 5th grade Brunswick Virtual Academy, your child will attend online class every day from 9 to 1:30. The first block will run from 9 to 10:15. The second block will go from 10:20 to 11:35. Lunch will be from 11:40 to 12:10. And then the third block will run from 12:15 to 2:30. As we previously stated, the Lincoln Learning schedule is self-paced, but there will be a specific expectation of progress for attendance purposes. Based on the feedback we received from our K-5 parents, I am really happy to announce that we will now be offering art, music, and physical education opportunities to our K-5 Brunswick Virtual Academy students and our K-5 Lincoln Learning students. We want to provide our students with a well-rounded curriculum, and access to these opportunities are so important. Art, music, and physical education teachers will be posting weekly activities. All of the activities will be exploratory in nature. They will be optional to complete, and they will not be graded. Students will not be submitting any assignments. Once again, we wanted to provide access to these classes for our K-5 remote learners. Due to the design of the K-5 Brunswick Virtual Academy, which is basically the district staffing an entire elementary online school, it is important for everybody to understand that depending on enrollment, the second semester could look very different for many of our K-5 students. Depending on the number of students who enroll in BVA, we would potentially have to move face-to-face teachers into the remote setting to appropriately staff the BVA. Basically, what this means is there's a possibility, whether you are a face-to-face student or a BVA student, that you could have a different teacher for the second semester. This is the exact same situation we were in during the first semester when we first offered the BVA. We know this type of transition midway through the year is not ideal. And of course, we will do all that we can to limit these changes. but I wanted to be really honest with our parents and our families about this possibility. Because of the impact this has on rosters and staffing, the choice of face-to-face, BVA, or Lincoln Learning will be a commitment for the entire second semester. The only possible change we could make would be to move a face-to-face student to Lincoln Learning. Students in face-to-face will not be able to move into BVA. BVA and Lincoln Learning students will not be able to move to face-to-face. Now, let's move to the options for our middle school students. Students in grades 6, 7, and 8 will have 3 options for the second semester: face-to-face learning, the grades 6 to 8 Brunswick Virtual Academy, and Lincoln Learning. These are the exact same options that we offered for the middle school during the first semester. There are no changes. If you select face-to-face learning, A to L students will attend face-to-face instruction on Mondays, Wednesdays, and every other Friday. On Tuesdays, Thursdays, and on the Fridays that they are not face-to-face, A to L students will be joining the live classes via Google Meet. M to Z students will attend face-to-face instruction on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and every other Friday. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and on the Fridays that they are not face-to-face, MZ students will be joining the live classes via Google Meet, just like we have previously been operating. If you select the grades 6 to 8 Brunswick Virtual Academy, your child will be joining the live classes via Google Meet every day, just like they did in the first semester. It is the exact same option. The only difference is that we're now calling it the Brunswick Virtual Academy. If you select Lincoln Learning, you will be placed in the asynchronous third-party curriculum. A reminder to our middle school families, Lincoln Learning is completely self-paced and there is no live instruction. The number of classes a student can take in Lincoln Learning will be limited. The schedule for the middle school, regardless if you select face-to-face or the BVA, will be the same. Students will follow the regular middle school schedule, which runs from 8:20 to 2:55. BVA students will just log into their live classes every day via Google Meet. The Lincoln Learning schedule is self-paced, but there will be a specific expectation of progress for our middle school students for attendance purposes. Due to the design of the middle school Brunswick Virtual Academy, there will be no changes regarding second semester teachers and schedules. You will have the same teachers that you did in the first semester. However, the choice you make for the second semester will be a commitment for the entire semester. When students move between environments, it is not conducive to the type of educational experience we're trying to create. We need our middle school teachers to know who will be face-to-face and who will be joining via Google Meet so that they can plan accordingly. This consistency is very important and needed in order to provide effective instruction. The only possible moves that can occur will be a one-time move from face-to-face to BVA or to Lincoln Learning. BVA or Lincoln Learning students will not be able to move to face-to-face. We have 2 options for our high school students. Students in grades 9, 10, 11, and 12 will be able to choose face-to-face learning or the grades 9 to 12 Brunswick Virtual Academy. Again, these are the exact same options that we offered for high school during the first semester. There have been no changes. If you select face-to-face learning, much like the middle school, A to L students will attend face-to-face instruction on Mondays, Wednesdays, and every other Friday. On Tuesdays, Thursdays, and on Fridays that they are not face-to-face, A to L students will be joining the live classes via Google Meet. M to Z students will attend face-to-face instruction on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and every other Friday. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and on the Fridays that they are not face-to-face, M to Z students will be joining the live classes via Google Meet. If you select the grades 9 to 12 Brunswick Virtual Academy, your child will be joining the live classes via Google Meet every day, just like the first semester. Again, it is the exact same option. We are now calling it the Brunswick Virtual Academy. The schedule for high school, regardless if you select face-to-face or the BVA, will be the same. Students will follow the regular high school schedule, which runs from 7:25 to 2:15. BVA students will just log into their live classes every day via Google Meet. Due to the design of the high school Brunswick Virtual Academy, there will be no changes regarding second semester teachers and schedules. You will have the same teachers that you did for your year-long classes in the second semester as you did in the first semester. For the same reasoning as the middle school, the choice you make for the second semester will be a commitment for the entire semester. The only possible move that can occur will be a one-time move from face-to-face to BVA. BVA students will not be able to move to face-to-face. I just wanted to end my part of the presentation with some important reminders. First, if you want your child to be part of BVA or Lincoln Learning, you must complete the BCSD second semester remote commitment form. As we said, this form was sent in Mr. Mayall's email on Monday, and a link is available on our website under District News. Even, and this is very important, even if you were part of BVA or Lincoln Learning in the first semester, you still must fill out this form if you want to continue in BVA or Lincoln Learning. The absolute last day to submit this form is Sunday, January 10th. The second reminder, and I know we have said this multiple times, is that your choice is for the entire second semester. Finally, I have had the opportunity to talk with many of you, either by phone or email, over the past few months. I want to invite you to reach out to me if you have any questions at all, or if there's anything I can help you with. My email is wgeschke@bcsoh.org, and my office phone number is 330-273-0458. Again, feel free to give me a call at any time if I can help you. I would now like to turn the presentation over to Taya Newman, our Director of Student Services.
Thank you, Mr. Geschke. Good evening, and thank you to everyone who is tuning in tonight. Again, my name is Taya Newman, and I am the Director of Student Services. I would just like to take a few minutes to summarize Student Services programming moving forward for the second semester. For the second semester, all parents again have the option to choose the learning platform that is the best fit for their child. Brunswick will continue to offer and support all options based on student grade band as presented by Mr. Geschke tonight. If your child has an IEP or a 504, the services and accommodations outlined in your child's specific plan will continue to be provided in any of the three platforms offered. Based on feedback, we have made some changes to schedules to better accommodate student needs. If your student was impacted by any of these changes, you would have received a letter from me earlier this evening outlining those changes. All ETR, IEP, and 504 meetings will continue to be scheduled and held according to federal compliance requirements. These meetings will continue to be conducted virtually, only via Google Meet or a conference call line. Once again, I would like to thank our families and our students for your ongoing collaboration, perseverance, and flexibility. I think I can speak on behalf of our entire staff. Your kind words and ongoing support through all of this have been unmatched and appreciated more than you can know. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or concerns specific to your child. We will now transition the question and answer portion of our presentation, which will be facilitated by our Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Niedermeyer.
Good evening, and thank you to the over 300 parents who have given us your time this evening. Please know that it is appreciated. Again, my name is Jason Niedermeyer, and I serve the Brunswick City School District as the Assistant Superintendent. Our first question this evening is going to go to Mr. Geschke, and we're going to start with, how will large-scale testing such as the PSAT and SAT work? And that's coming from a high school parent.
Yeah, it's a great question, and our high school administrative team has been working really hard to solve this. A couple weeks ago, it went before the board a testing schedule where we would provide asynchronous lessons for our high school students and just bring in our students who are taking the SAT, just like our students, I believe it was yesterday, who took the government end of course exam. By having only basically one class in, and the rest of the students at home working on a asynchronous lesson or asynchronous activities. We're able to socially distance all of our students in, let's say, the junior class throughout the building, small number of kids per room in order to administer the SAT.
Thank you, Mr. Geschke. The next question has to do with face-to-face learning from a middle school parent. I think it's specific to health and safety. The question is, can you provide current quarantine protocol based on the governor's latest guidance changes? Will students be forced to quarantine if they are wearing a mask in the classroom setting if there is COVID and a student? So based on the governor's latest announcement, the only change that we will be implementing as a school district, and this is coming in consultation with the Medina County Health Department, is in the past, if we had a student in a classroom who ended up testing positive for COVID, we were required to do a contact trace through that student's schedule. And we had to identify all of the students that were within 6 feet of that student during any point of the day for 15 minutes or more. So basically what is happening with the pilot evaluation that the Ohio Schools for COVID-19 evaluation team did is they've determined that 6 foot proximity is now going to be 3 feet. So when we are back face to face in any of our buildings, if we find that a student tests positive for COVID, we will continue to contact trace. And if we find that there was a student that was 3 feet or closer to the student who tested positive, then we will enact quarantining. Our next question is going to go back to Mr. Geschke. So the question is about Lincoln Learning, and it's coming from a grade 4 or 5 parent. If we pick this option, if we pick this option in this guaranteed, or is there a possibility they will not have enough seats? Do the kids need a Chromebook, or can they use a personal laptop?
There will be enough seats. Same thing. I saw a couple people ask questions about, will there be enough students for our BVA? And the answer will be yes. We will be able to facilitate that for sure. Yeah, you don't have to worry about being able to get into Lincoln Learning. The school issued Chromebook works. You could also use a personal laptop for that as well. It's a web-based program.
Thank you. We had another Lincoln Learning based question from Mr. Geschke, again from a grade 4 through grade 5 parent. Can you elaborate on what you mean by number of classes a student can take are limited?
So currently for our elementary Lincoln learners, they are taking ELA, they're taking math, and they're taking social studies. There are 3 classes that they can take. That's it. For the second semester at elementary, they'll be taking ELA, math, and science. That will be the only classes that will be offered. At the middle school, it's ELA, math, science, and social studies. Those are the only classes that can be offered. So if you enroll in BVA or face-to-face, obviously you'll get the full spectrum of courses offered at the middle school and at the elementary school.
Thank you. The next question, I'm actually going to lump 2 questions together. We had a high school parent and a middle school parent who they want to know, why is the middle school not back in person learning 5 days a week? And the high school is, do you believe that there will be an opportunity to return to full time for high school students? At this point, the second semester is really not a change from this first semester. The challenge that we experience in both of those buildings at the secondary level is our ability to feed students. When a student takes their mask off, we have to guarantee 6 feet of physical distancing. And when you talk about trying to feed 600 plus students at a grade level at either of the 2 buildings, we just don't physically have the space to be able to do that. So at this point, we are going to continue with our A through L and M through Z model for the foreseeable future. The next question is for Mr. Geschke. It's a kindergarten through grade 2 student about the Brunswick Virtual Academy. If we are currently in the Brunswick Virtual Academy, will we be in the same class, or are you going to mix everything up?
we will make every attempt to keep people in the same class. I know that our BVA students have formed great relationships with our teachers online. We would do everything that we can. Again, there's no guarantees that can be made because we have to see what the enrollment numbers are. But moving kids from their first semester teacher would always be one of our last resorts. We don't want to do that. And that goes for our BVA students as well. So our goal is to keep it as much as we can consistent. We'll just have to see how many people enroll. But again, we understand that nobody wants that. We don't want that either. So we'll do everything that we can to avoid it.
Our next question came from a kindergarten through grade 2 student. And the question was, when will masks stop being required? Based on the guidance from the Ohio Department of Health, the health director's order is that students are expected to wear masks in schools. And we will continue to work with the Medina County Department of Health in the event that they would lift that. But for the foreseeable future, I do not see that going away. Another question relating to health and safety, again, from a kindergarten through grade 2 parent. What will the protocols be with respect to exhibiting symptoms, illness, and health checks? Will there continue to be a required quarantine period? So as we did in the first semester, we're going to ask parents to continue to do the daily health assessment with their child before they send them to school. In the event that a child exhibits symptoms, we're going to expect that parents communicate with us those symptoms. And if they're COVID related, like we did in the first semester, we're going to ask that the parent seek guidance from their pediatrician to make sure that the student is not COVID positive, or is there a need to have the student tested? The quarantine period did change slightly near the end of the first semester. It was moved from a 14-day quarantine period down to a 10-day quarantine period. But I don't see big changes happening with the quarantine periods as well. Our next question is for Mr. Geschke from a middle school parent about face-to-face learning. My child will be moving from Brunswick Virtual Academy to face-to-face. Since this will be her first time at the new middle school, will there be a system in place for her to become familiar with the new school? Could she tour the school before the first day of the semester?
It's a great question. And I've had this conversation with numerous parents, and we've reached out already to our middle school and high school principals about this transition to provide some sort of orientation for our students who will be entering the building for the first time. So know that that's in the works, and know that we will definitely create something to welcome our students and introduce them to the building for those that are coming in for the first time.
Another question for Mr. Geschke. When we finally bring all of these students back together because it is safe, how will you address the learning gaps created by these different options?
Yeah, it's a great question. And that's the big challenge. Whether it's learning gaps because of remote learning or because, some students have been face-to-face and others haven't had that opportunity yet, that's definitely going to be the challenge. So we have a variety of things in place, including some diagnostic testing that can help our teachers identify where kids are. We could use that to identify gaps. But yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge for our educators, for our teachers and our principals, to be able to identify those gaps and to be able to close those gaps as quickly as possible. One thing that we have done with our remote learning teachers is we've emphasized the idea of priority standards, looking at specific grade level standards that are, if you will, prerequisites or necessities to be successful at the next level. And we've asked our teachers, due to the decrease in instructional time that they have in a remote setting, to really focus on those standards so that when students go into, let's say, a face-to-face environment next year, those standards will be the ones that have been really dug into to hopefully close some of those gaps for our kids. But again, that's the big challenge, no doubt about it.
We had a question from a middle school parent about face-to-face learning. The question was, why can't the middle school and high school students not eat in their classrooms? And when we worked with our high school and middle school administrators and we look at the available space in our cafeterias and then the available space in classrooms, basically, we don't have the ability to supervise students effectively across multiple classrooms. And in our classrooms, if you're providing students with 6 feet of social distancing, the number of students that you can fit in that room with masks off is relatively limited. So we did explore those options, but at this point, we were unsuccessful in coming up with a solution that ensured the safety of our students. We have a question about face-to-face learning from a middle school parent for Mr. Mail. Will the children be going back to school face-to-face full-time in February? Or when do you think the children will be going back to school 5 days a week full-time?
Yeah, Mr. Niedermeyer touched on this a little bit earlier. We're not at that point right now to be able to put our students in those buildings face-to-face, all students on the same time. It's going to depend on the community spread out there. When we started this modified hybrid situation, our spread was much less than it is now. So it's gotten worse since we started this model. So again, the schools and the spread, it's got a lot to do with how the community is going to be in the future. But I can assure you our goal is to get every student in school every day as soon as possible.
Thank you. Our next question is about the Brunswick Virtual Academy from a kindergarten through grade 2 parent for Mr. Geschke. You mentioned efforts will be made for both in-person and Brunswick Virtual Academy students to keep their teacher. It seems impossible for what could be half the students. The same teacher would not be conducting both online and in-person instruction, correct?
At the elementary level, that is correct. There will be a different teacher that is a face-to-face teacher and a remote teacher. They will not be the same. It all depends ultimately on the numbers of kids that enroll. For example, we have, let's say 30 kindergarten students right now in our BVA, and we have that as an AM PM, right? So that means 15 students in the morning, 15 students in the afternoon. If, let's say, we get another 30 that sign up for BVA, that takes us to 60. So we're going to need to get another teacher there to staff that, right? So that means we're going to have to pull one teacher, let's say a kindergarten teacher from a building with low kindergarten numbers and put that person in remote learning, and then maybe move those students at that one kindergarten face-to-face class into another teacher. So it's really a shuffling. It's not like a half and half. It's a shuffling depending on the number of kids who sign up for BVA. But I do want to emphasize that this was the exact same scenario for the first semester. When we started the BVA, and what we did was we looked at all those numbers, and we have our calendars blocked off next week for, to pull the numbers and to begin staffing and adjusting it as needed. So it could have a dramatic impact on people for sure, but it's not necessarily a half and half thing.
Our next question comes from a kindergarten through grade 2 parent around health and safety, specifically masks. I have a child with special needs. He and some children in his class can't wear masks. Will those children still be quarantined based on the old guidelines of 6 feet? And that is absolutely correct. So the new quarantining guidelines, or I should say the close contact guidelines of 3 feet, are all based on the premise that students are properly wearing masks. So in the event that there's a special needs classroom where students just cannot wear a mask, when we go to do that close contact tracing, we will be using 6 feet of proximity. Our next question comes from a high school parent about the Brunswick Virtual Academy. What can we I'm sorry, Mr. Geschke, this one's for you. What can we expect with finals this year?
So we've been having conversations about finals. As you know, if you're in high school, we did not administer midterms. We didn't think that was the best thing to do for students. So we're going to evaluate and decide on the finals moving forward. But obviously we canceled the midterms this year, and we'll have a decision soon on final exams. Obviously, though, everything we're going to do is going to be in the best interest of kids. Another question for Mr. Geschke from a grade 4 through grade 5 parent.
Why is the commitment for the entire semester? Any chance that it could be for the quarter instead?
It's a great question, but at the elementary, because of the dramatic impact it has on staffing and having, as I talked about before, to reshuffle rosters and move kids, there's just no way that we could do that. There's no way we can do that at the elementary level.
Mr. Geschke, are you expecting more or less remote learners the second semester?
Everybody in central office has thrown in $20 to make a bet as to what the number will be. I have no idea. I have no idea. I wish I could tell you. If I could anticipate that, I would also play the lottery, but we'll see by Sunday night.
Great answer.
Thank you.
And let's see, we have answered 44 questions so far. I'm just looking to see if there's anything that we haven't covered yet. Here's another one from Mr. Geschke. If we would like our child to remain remote until the end of January, can we still do that? They were face-to-face for the first semester, and that's from a middle school parent.
So when students return face-to-face, beginning on Monday for the rest of the first semester, there are 13 instructional days. So if you're a middle school or a high school student or parent, and you want your student to remain remote for the rest of the first semester at the middle school or high school level, reach out to me. Give me a call or send me an email, and we'll see what we can work out.
We had a question from a high school parent about face-to-face learning. Since some of the high school classrooms only have 1 to 2 kids in them at one time, why can't you take a poll as to how many kids will be attending face-to-face versus online and put A through Z full-time? That's a really great suggestion. And in a lot of cases, you might have a classroom that would have 4 to 5 students, but ultimately you could have another classroom right next to it at the same grade level with the same cohort of students that could have 14 to 16 kids. So the challenge would be to be able to run a schedule where we could appropriately socially distance students. So I can share with you in my conversations with Mr. Merrill that he is doing everything in his power to make sure that we get as many kids back into our building as soon as possible. And if that is an option based on the numbers that come in, that's something that we would potentially look at.
Yeah, I'd like to add into that too, Mr. Niedermeyer. You also have to remember at the high school, they have multiple classes. So there could be 2 or 3, 4 kids in their math class, but then they move to language arts. There could be 15 students in that class. So you really can't bring them in full just for one section when they have 5 or 6 sections for that day. So that makes it very complicated.
Mr. Geschke, we have a Brunswick Virtual Academy from a kindergarten through grade 2 parents. Is it possible that a Brunswick Virtual Academy student could end up with a long-term substitute as their teacher?
I think anything is possible. If a teacher were to go on leave for some reason, say pregnancy, we might fill that with a long-term sub. So yeah, I think that could be a possibility.
Another question for you, Mr. Geschke, from a middle school parent. Will state tests be administered like the air tests?
Yeah, we're all waiting to hear the answer on that. I know there's legislation in place that they're looking to cancel potentially those end of course exams and the air tests like they did last year, but we do not have an answer on that yet. And so we are going to operate from the notion that we will be administering those state exams, but we'll be also following the news closely to see if they change that.
Mr. Geschke, when will we find out if our child has a new teacher?
In a lot of the Google Meets we had with especially our elementary remote learning families, this was a topic that we talked about, and the desire was to know as soon as possible so that parents can work with their kids over multiple weeks to kind of explain that transition and help them through that transition. So our goal is to get this information out as soon as possible. I don't have a drop dead date yet, But again, Sunday night is the deadline for people to choose either BVA or Lincoln Learning. We'll know those numbers then, and next week we have a team here that we're going to work on staffing and enrollment and rostering. Once that's done, we will communicate that as quickly as possible to our families and to our teachers as well, so that everybody knows, and ideally we'll have multiple weeks to kind of prepare for that. People will know that multiple weeks ahead of time.
We had a question from a kindergarten through grade 2 parent about Brunswick Virtual Academy. What impact does DeWine's March 4th deadline have on remote learning? While I can't speak to Governor DeWine's announcement with any specificity, I guess the way I interpret his announcement about that deadline is there are a number of school districts across the state of Ohio that have yet to open their doors to any students at all whatsoever. So I don't see this March 4th deadline coming and going where we would all of a sudden have to require our remote learners to report to school. I don't think that's really I don't think that's his idea around making that announcement. I think it's more of the idea that we need to make every decision we make to get kids into schools as quickly as possible. We need to do, and I think Brunswick has done a wonderful job of trying to make that happen. We have a question for Ms. Newman, special education. Is it possible for students on IEPs to go face-to-face 5 days?
We make all of our decisions based on individual needs. Everything is case by case. So if you have a specific scenario that you'd like to discuss, please reach out to your student's case manager and we will schedule a meeting to discuss your child's needs.
Our next question is from a middle school parent. Mr. Geschke, will fit time continue for Brunswick Middle School, or will we return to Pride time as an actual class with required attendance?
It will transition back to Pride time, where that it fits into the daily schedule. We really want to encourage as intervention time, social emotional learning as well, but it will transition back to Pride time.
Another question here for Mr. Geschke. Will any of this have an effect on scheduling for next year for both high school and middle school?
That's another great question. One of the things that we struggled with last year was we used those norm-based tests, standardized tests, oftentimes for placements, for example, in advanced math at the middle school. So we had to make changes to how we would go about making those placements without the availability of that data. So to some extent, it will impact, but again, we're always going to err on the side of the kid, and we will make sure that we're going to, as a district, we believe in providing opportunities, not in closing doors. So in terms of scheduling, we're going to do all that we can to meet the needs of our students for next year.
Our next question came from a grade 3 parent about Brunswick Virtual Academy. Will there always be an option for online while COVID is with us? I guess how I'd answer that question is this pandemic has truly been unprecedented for everyone involved. It has made us think about how we deliver education in the 21st century. As we move forward and the light at the end of the tunnel happens and we start to see the vaccination process take care of itself, we realize that there's always going to be, we're going to continue to experience situations where people don't feel safe. So I would think that if there's anything that this has taught us is that we have the ability to adapt and meet the needs of our students in Brunswick. We will continue to do that. Our next question is for Mr. Geschke. This question is for middle or high school. If my student chooses face-to-face and needs to quarantine or be absent for an extended period of time, will they still be able to live stream their classes from home?
It's one of the benefits of our BVA at the middle school and high school level, and the answer to that is yes, absolutely. We would encourage students who have to be absent because of quarantine that they could log in and join their classes and not miss out on that.
We had a question from a grade 3 parent. Will the vaccine be a mandatory thing for students? At this point, like we've answered a lot of the other questions related to health and safety, we will continue to work with our health department to make a vaccine mandatory. I haven't heard of that. Currently, that's not how our board policy operates. But we will certainly continue to work with the Ohio Department of Health and the Medina County Department of Health to determine our expectations around students receiving vaccines. Mr. Geschke, are teachers being encouraged to decrease homework to help decrease screen time for online students?
There's another question that I'm going to combine with that one, and is, will teachers be encouraged to allocate equal attention and focus to online and in-person students? So, that's, I just said before that one of the benefits of our middle school and high school BVA is that, students can log in and join via Google Meets. One of the downfalls of that, though, is it's very, very challenging for our teachers to engage our online learners and our face-to-face learners at the same time. It is definitely a challenge. We have been working and having conversations with our teachers about a variety of different things. And ironically, one of the things, and this person who wrote the question talked about it, decreasing screen time for online students, which seems contradictory, but that's exactly what we've talked to our teachers about. We're asking, think of offline tasks that can be accomplished so that maybe a teacher can work with a small group while other people are working on something that doesn't have to necessarily be computer-based. Again, this is the first year that our teachers are doing that, and I think our teachers are doing some really, really amazing things. But that's new for a lot of people. And again, it's almost counterintuitive, but that's absolutely what we would like to see. We don't want our teachers to feel that, if you have a 75-minute remote learning, in BVA at 5th grade, we don't want our teachers to feel that they have to talk into a camera for 75 straight minutes and have our students look into the screen for 75 minutes and just be passive learners. So we are definitely working on that.
We had a question from a high school parent about face-to-face learning and quarantining. So if a student has to quarantine and goes from in-person to virtual for that, can they return to in-person once the quarantine time is up? Or is that considered a one-time change? So much like we handled our quarantine situations from the first semester, if a student is forced to quarantine based on wherever the exposure is, it could be exposure at home or exposure in our building. Once that quarantine period is over, the student is welcomed back to our building as soon as they finish up that quarantine. I have another quarantine question from an elementary parent. Similarly to the previous question, if a K through 2 face-to-face student needs to quarantine, how will they stay caught up with their schoolwork? So like we did in the first semester, should a student have to be quarantined, the classroom teacher is responsible for working with the parent to determine how work is shared. Some teachers utilize Google Classroom. Some teachers will put work together and the parent reports to the building to pick that work up. But either the case, it's a case-by-case situation. It's really kind of teacher dependent. So we will continue to have that practice. It looks like we have another question for Mr. Geschke. Will high school students still have Wednesdays as half days?
No. Beginning in the second semester, we will be going. Well, once students return, once students return on Monday, actually, we will revert back to the A to L, M to Z schedule. So Wednesdays will be a regular day for a face-to-face day for A to L.
Another question for you, Mr. Geschke. Are high school students going to still have 40-minute classes? Is there still going to be scheduled intervention times?
So they will return to the normal bell schedule as if they were face-to-face. We've heard the request. We've actually had conversations this week about finding ways to provide intervention for our BVA high school students. So we're looking into finding time where, we could designate a specific intervention time for those students, but they will be returning to the regular bell schedule. Mr. Niedermeyer, there was another question that's similar to that, and it was at the elementary level. An elementary family decided to do remote for the first semester, and they're going to continue with remote for the second semester. They were wondering what the schedule is going to be like from January 11th to January 28th. So if you were part of BVA in the first semester, you're just going to continue with that throughout the first semester. Again, that doesn't change. All of the things that we talked about today go into effect beginning February 1, which is the second semester. I know, it's a little confusing that we're coming back face to face on Monday, January 11th, which is still in the first semester, but all of these that we're talking about go into effect February 1st, the beginning of the second semester.
We have a question from a grade 3 parent about quarantines. Will quarantine go down to 10 days or still be 14? Currently, our practice that we are implementing with guidance from the health department is our quarantines are 10 days. There are exceptions to that, so we handle every single situation on a case-by-case basis, but our general rule of thumb at this point is it's a 10-day quarantine. Okay, at this point, that's going to conclude our question and answer portion of this presentation. I'd like to turn it back over to Mr. Mail for our concluding comments.
I would once again like to thank you all for joining our town hall tonight. As a reminder, if you choose to be part of the Brunswick Virtual Academy or Linking Learning for second semester, you must submit the Brunswick City School District second semester remote commitment form by this Sunday, January 10th. If this form is not submitted, your child will be placed in a face-to-face classroom. Thank you all again to all of our students, families, and staff for their continued efforts. As always, I invite you to reach out to me if you have any further questions or if I can help in any way. Thank you and stay safe.